Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another neat webinar. If you're new here, a second welcome to you for joining your first neat webinar. The goal of today's webinar is to really walk you through some best practices for wrapping up your organizational and your financial year so that you can really start the new off on the right foot. Now, this webinar is a little bit different. It's a bit quicker than our usual deep dives into different neat features and functionality, because this webinar is focused and more broadly focused on high-level best practices that really everyone can follow for the end of the year. We didn't tailor this webinar to a specific industry or business or personal user. So really, these tips can be followed by anybody. Because it's shorter, that'll just give us more time at the end of the webinar for any questions that come in that we can, try to answer live. For those of you who are new here, my name is Nicole. I'm the Director of Customer Success here at the Neat Company. And with me today, I also have George, Tia, and Melissa. They are also here from the Neat Company. They're customer success representatives as well. And they're going to help me answer all of your Neat-related questions. So as we go through the webinar, just go ahead and pop any questions that you have about Neat or about any of the topics we're discussing in that chat box, and we'll start to get you answers as soon as we can. To get started, let's just quickly talk about why year-end organization even matters. Year-end organization really isn't just about tidying up. It's about setting yourself up for success next year. By reviewing and organizing your documents and your finances now, you can start preparing for your tax filing months before your taxes are due. It also is going to give you the opportunity to catch any missed expenses or missed revenue, and also just to gain a clearer picture of your financial performance this year. A lot of our tips and tricks are all about, catching missed expenses and revenue and seeing where you are in terms of your performance for your finances. And this clarity is going to help you make smarter financial decisions for the year ahead. And best of all, when your finances are clean and up to date, you can start the new year fresh, confident, and ready to grow. So with that, our first best practice is to collect, capture, and store all receipts that you acquire throughout the year. And I think this is a pretty obvious best practice, but it does have to be said. It's the best practice that really drives success when it comes to using Neat and it comes to managing your finances. This is something that you shouldn't just be doing at the end of the year. You should be doing this all year long, not just at the end of the year. So when the year end does roll around, you can just focus on reviewing and categorizing recent expenses and receipts. And you don't put yourself into this pickle where maybe you are uploading and sorting through a full year's worth of receipts and expenses at the end of the year. Just spending 10 minutes a week in Neat uploading and organizing your receipts is really all it takes to stay organized all year round. Keeping a complete and organized record of your receipts is essential for IRS compliance and audit protection. And also, receipts serve as proof for every tax deduction that you claim, which help you maximize your tax deductions. So really, every single receipt counts, and you want to try to capture and collect every single receipt that you have. Now, if you did wait until the end of the year to upload all of your receipts or organize all your expenses now, you can use Neat to help you organize those expenses now. And in Neat, there are many ways to upload and get all of your receipts and expenses and finances into Neat. You can snap a photo of your receipts using the Neat mobile application. The Neat mobile application is included with all Neat subscriptions, and it allows you to capture your files and manage your files on the go. Any e-receipts that you've received can be directly forwarded to Neat using the email forwarding feature and your custom unique Neat Cloud email in address that each account includes and each user with a subscription has. You can also import digital receipts directly to Neat, and you can even scan and digitize receipts using the Neat desktop application and a Twain compliance scanner. And for Windows users, we also have the print Neat feature as well, which allows you to send like order confirmation pages directly to Neat versus having to save it and then upload it. Now, Neat's smart categorization tool and our OCR processing tools will help you organize and categorize all your receipts by automatically pulling key details like the date, the vendor, amount, and even learned expense categories so that your documentation and your files are complete and searchable. Now, I've talked about all of these different ways that you can collect and capture and store your receipts in Neat, scan, mobile capture, email forwarding. So if you want to see me talk about any of these in particular, or demonstrate any of these in particular, I recommend going to our webinar library, neat.com/webinars, and scrolling down to the snippets section. And there I have, there are short videos, 5 to 15-minute long videos that cover most of the different upload methods here. All right. We are going to talk about our next best practice then. Our next best practice is to categorize every expense or every receipt that you upload to Neat. So as you're uploading your files to Neat, either hopefully throughout the year and not just at the end of the year, but if you are uploading all your receipts at the end of the year, you're doing it then too. Properly categorizing expenses gives you a clear picture of where your money is going, and it ensures you maximize your eligible tax deductions, which is what it's really all about. Without consistent categorization, you risk misreporting expenses or missing key tax write-offs. Neat's smart categorization tool, which I mentioned earlier, is really a big help here because Neat will actually learn from your categorizations. As you go through and you're categorizing files, Neat's learning how you are categorizing certain vendors. And as Neat learns, it'll automatically categorize your transactions and your uploaded receipts based on previous categorizations that you've done. But you can always easily adjust categories to match your tax preferences or adjust them based on your accountant's recommendations as well. So for the end of the year, when it comes to expense categorization, there's really one big best practice that we recommend, and that is we recommend looking through your Neat database and your Neat receipts for receipts with missing or incorrect expense categories. And Neat has a couple tools that can help you accomplish this, such as filtering and through bulk editing. So I'm actually going to show you now a demonstration of 3 different things: filtering, bulk editing, and splitting receipts that will help you with categorizing your files and making sure that you are itemizing your receipts as well whenever you need to for expense categorization as well. So we're going to hop into that demonstration now. And I'm going to share my Neat account to demonstrate this for you. I'm just making sure that you guys are also seeing what I'm seeing. It looks like you are. So we're here in my Neat account now, and we're here in my All Files folder. So again, the best practice is that you want to spend time at the end of the year reviewing your receipts and making sure every one of your receipts has the best expense category that represents the type of expense it is, which is going to help you, especially if you're using Neat for, putting your taxes together. It's going to help you maximize those tax deductions. So here we are in my All Files folder. Now you could go to a specific folder if you know all of the expenses that you want to look at are in a specific folder, but you can also just filter to specific files. So I'm going to add a filter for item type, and we're going to select receipt, and we can see that I have over 1,000 receipts in my database. I'm also going to add a filter for date because I only want to see receipts from the current year, 2025. So right now I'm filtering, I'm seeing 281 receipts that are associated with my 2025 receipts. The last thing that I want to do is I also want to add a filter for expense category. And here's the tip is that you add a filter for expense category and look for this blank category field. If you see this blank category field, then that means that there are files or receipts in this case in my database that are missing an expense category or essentially having a blank expense category. So that's a hole in my data, and that's definitely not what you want in Neat. You want all of the data, all of these fields to be filled out, as accurately as possible. You don't want any holes in your data. So I'm going to put a check mark next to the blank category. I also recommend looking through your general retail receipts as well. So I'm going to add this to the filter as well. The reason for this is because general retail as an expense category is really kind of just a catch-all expense category that can be applied to literally any receipt or any expense. If you want to use NEAT for preparing your taxes or understanding, where you're spending your money and to make better budgeting decisions, then I recommend adding a more specific expense category to your files wherever possible. However, if you're just interested in NEAT for storage, you're not interested in tracking your expense categorization or using it for tax prep, then general retail is also fine to use. But I'm adding a filter here for files in my database with a blank category and files in my database with general retail. And then what I recommend that you do is I can see that there are 36 files within my database from this year that have a general retail category or a blank category. I recommend going through each one of these files one by one and just making sure that the expense category is accurate, or check to see if there's a better expense category that you can apply to it. Perhaps maybe this one should actually be like office supplies instead. And then I can update my tax form as well. Maybe office expenses. And then by updating that expense category, I'm getting more specific details about actually where I'm spending my money in terms of expense categories. And you can work through all 36. In this case, I have 36 files that I can look through, but you can, go through each one of the files, updating and adding expense categories where you need to. So this was like car insurance. So I can add a car insurance category here and click Save. Now, if you identify a whole bunch of receipts that, maybe need to be updated at the same time, maybe, there's a bunch of them that all need to be updated to a specific expense category. For example, I have this Acme receipt and this Acme receipt here. If there are other ones that maybe I wanted to do, I have another Acme receipt and this Acme receipt. I can select all of these Acme receipts, and I know that I want to change the category for all of those just to groceries. So I can select a bunch of them, and then I can right-click and I can choose bulk edit. And through the bulk edit process, I can go through and I can update the expense category for all of these files at one time versus having to go through and update each one of them on their own. So I can apply the groceries expense category to all of these. I can click next and next again. And now NEAT is bulk editing all 6 of those files to add that expense category to all of them. And then we're seeing them drop off of my filter because they no longer are a general retail category or a blank category. And so again, I just recommend going through all of those receipts that are missing a category or have general retail as a category and making better decisions or making more specific expense category choices there so that you have more details about what is going on and how you're spending your money. The next thing, the last thing that I wanted to talk about here as well when it comes to expense categorizations is you also don't want to forget about reviewing and itemizing any tax deductions. For example, the IRS requires that you itemize any tax deductions for like charitable donations. So for example, I have like this manna receipt here, which was a charitable contribution that I made earlier this year. I have a couple of them here. Let me find the one that I'm looking for. It's, we're just filtering the grid here. I'm clicking date up at the top of the grid here to filter, or sort my grid by date. So I have a manna receipt that I think is like 11/11. Let me find it. Here we are. Here it is. So we have like this manna receipt here, which I see as a charitable donation. And actually, to make this even easier, what you could do is you could just add a filter for charitable donation. So I can filter to receipts, and then I can add in a category for charitable donations. And then I can look through all of my charitable donation receipts here and determine whether or not these receipts need to be itemized in any way. For example, this one I know needs to be itemized. So I can select the item and I can choose to split it. I can split it by right-clicking and choosing split here. And then what I can do is I can actually assign a total amount and an expense category for different elements of this receipt. So for example, I know $150 of this total $206 was considered a charitable donation. I can add a project to it. I can add a payment type. I can add a tax form. I know this is like a no cash charity contribution. And then I can click save and add new. And then I can add another line for the remaining balance. And maybe the remaining balance is, or maybe the rest of this is just groceries. And I can add tax. I can add all additional fields to this, like a specific tax category, a different project. I can add notes to this and save it. And now what I've done is I've split this charitable contribution into two different line items. A charitable donation line item that I can actually submit in my tax report for tax deductions, and this other $56 that doesn't count towards tax deductions and therefore shouldn't be submitted to the IRS. And when I'm done, I can go ahead and I can click split, and the NEAT is going to create two different items. One item for the charitable contributions, one item for the grocery expenses. And all of those details will flow through to my NEAT reports, my filters, my CSV files, and anything else that I need in NEAT. So you can now also split those expense categories between, on a receipt between different projects or business and personal and the like. So I hope that helps. The splitting receipts feature was a long requested feature, and I'm glad we finally are able to deliver that. Let's pop back into our slides here. Okay. Now, for transaction users or users with an automated Insights NEAT Cloud subscription plan, similar to reviewing all your receipts for missing and incorrect expense categories within the file cabinet, a part of your year-end processes should be to reconcile your connected financial accounts in NEAT to ensure that your transactions from your bank, any credit card accounts, any payment platforms that you can connected to NEAT matches your business records. And this step, just like reviewing your receipts, is critical for catching errors, identifying missing or duplicate transactions, and ensuring that your financial data is accurate before you start filing your taxes. And again, this is really something that you should be doing monthly, really not just at the end of the year. You're putting yourself into a bit of a pickle if you're waiting to do all of this stuff right at the end of the year. If you're doing all of this stuff throughout the year, then you really just need to do one little final wrap up of the last 2 months, and you'll have that great peace of mind. So I'm going to just pop into NEAT real quick because I wanted to show you guys the monthly review section. In this section here up at the top in transactions, you can view all of your financial data in one place. So I can do like the last, I know I have like data going back 3 years or more in here. So we'll just filter to that. But you can see, I have so many different accounts connected to NEAT over here, and I'm able to see all my financial data from all my different connected accounts in one place. And I can also quickly cross-check these transactions with source files from my file cabinet, making that reconciliation process like super stress-free. And then we also have this built-in monthly review workflow in NEAT that will walk you through reconciling each of your connected accounts for each month of the year, providing you with this visual way to see which transactions and which accounts still need to be reconciled. So again, like ideally, you should be doing this at, when a new month starts, you should be reviewing the previous month and reviewing each account for the previous month and each transaction from the previous month and matching those transactions with source documents. So we have this monthly review workflow that'll kind of walk you through that. So I can, selecting an account under the monthly review process shows you exactly how many transactions took place during that particular period or that particular month and what the net outcome was. And it also sets you up to and helps you match files within or transactions within that period with matching source documents from your file cabinet, like this one here. We can see that Neat is letting me know that this Acme receipt from my filing cabinet in my 2025 expenses folder matches this transaction. And I can match this image to this transaction, effectively reconciling this transaction because I have a source document here. And then I can even mark it as reviewed. Once you've done that, then your reviewed status will increase and you can see how many files you have left to review for a specific account in a specific period. And then, once each account has been reconciled, they will show as green complete. And then once each month is reconciled, those months will show as complete as well. So you can visually look at this timeline and see, hey, I'm completely up to date. I've reviewed this month. I've reviewed all the transactions. I know all the data is accurate. I don't need to painstakingly at the end of the year go through all of my transactions. All right. Our next best practice is to review and generate expense reports for the year. Analyzing your expenses helps you understand your financial performance and, again, maximize those tax deductions. It's also an opportunity to spot trends, overspending, or new opportunities for saving. And you can also use these generated Neat reports to get a jump start on your tax prep. For example, you can easily generate an expense report for your files to date and send an early copy of that report over to your CPA or accountant who can get a jump start on reviewing your expenses. And then they can get back to you and let you know early if there's any changes that you should make to how you are categorizing expenses or how you have documented expenses that you are trying to file. In Neat, we recommend generating a year-end expense report. The expense report includes everything you need to send over to your accountant for tax deductions, which is why we recommend the expense report. The expense report provides you with a summary of how much was spent on each different expense category, a line-by-line breakdown of each item in the report, plus all the source images associated with each expense in the report as well. And then you can also choose to export your report data to a CSV file at the same time. That will give you the ability to slice and dice your data even further in Excel or in Google Sheets as well. We're going to pop over into Neat real quick. I'm just going to show you what it's like to create an expense report in Neat. I can create a report. I'm going to go to my All Files folder here. We can create a report by clicking Reports up at the top right-hand corner here. There's an expense report for transactions and an expense report for the file cabinet as well. Like I said, I recommend creating an expense report because it includes pretty much everything you need to send over to your accountant who can start reviewing all of your different expenses and tax deductions. So I can add a date filter for the current year. If I wanted to, I could, separate out my business receipts from my personal receipts by choosing a specific folder or another filter here. But I'm just going to click Next Step because I just want to see all my receipts from this year in an expense report. I can go in and I can name my report. So I'll just name it 2025 Year-End Expense Report. I can choose a folder to save it in. And then I can even add notes to if there is something in particular that I want to include. And as I mentioned earlier, you can also download a copy of your report as a CSV file at the same time by putting a little check mark in this checkbox here. And what will happen is, in addition to the Neat generated report you will also get a downloaded CSV file of each of the items within your expense report broken down so that you can see all of the data associated with them, including notes, projects, customers, basically all of the details that you're saving in Neat on any particular file. And when you're ready, you can go ahead and click Create. Now, I created this report earlier, so I'm just going to find that report right here. But this is kind of what the report would look like. So I have I ran this report for all my receipts up to 12/6/2025. It's a huge report. There's 331 pages because there's nearly 300 receipts within this report. We can see a breakdown of how much I spent on each different expense category here and how many different expenses or receipts goes into that total amount. And we can also see a total here as well. And then when we scroll down, I can see a line-by-line breakdown of all the files within my report along with their notes. And then if I scroll down even further past all the line-by-line items, we'll see that I also have images for all of the files within my report as well. I just have to find them because there's so many things, so many receipts in this. But we can see here, we have the images for all of my files in my report as well. And each image has an expense number assigned to it, and that number represents the number or the place where that particular image appears within your line-by-line breakdown. So expense 4 is that image that we were just looking at. And if I were to find expense 4 within this chart, that would match the image that's there. So really everything you need to send over to your CPA or account to get a jump start on reviewing your expenses and your receipts for the year for maximizing those tax deductions are here. All right, and that's going to bring us to our last best practice for closing out the financial year, and that is to archive and prepare your database for next year. So we recommend trying to archive any old data and preparing that database by creating your new folder structure for the year. This really ensures that your current year's records are secure and backed up and easy to access if you ever need them. Plus, it also helps you to start the new year with a clean, organized system that's ready to go. So we're going to hop back right into Neat again here. Now, I do want to clarify that Neat doesn't have a built-in archive feature just yet. I will say it is on our product roadmap, though I don't have an estimated time for when we expect the archiving feature to be available. However, I do still think that it is an important step, and I have a suggestion to work around the non-built-in archiving feature. And that is to just simply create a folder within your database for your archive. So for example, I have like my business folder here, and I've just created a folder called Business Archive here. And what I've done is I have just moved all of my older receipts for all previous years to this folder and all tax documents for previous years to this folder. And that way I know basically everything within this Business Archive folder is old data that I don't really need immediate access to. So what I recommend is just taking, dragging and dropping basically your folder from this year into your Business Archive folder. And then down the line, once a full archiving feature is available in Neat, you'll already know which files you want to archive because they'll all be in this archive folder that you've created within your database. And you'll be able to then just quickly archive those specific files and move on. So you can kind of set yourself up for once that feature becomes available down the line. The other thing that you can do to set up your database for next year is you can use our duplicate folder feature. So for example, if you are someone who, maybe you have a specific folder structure that you use for each year. For example, maybe you have like a folder for the year and then months under that, or maybe specific, a folder for projects, a folder for clients for that year, and you want to recreate that folder structure. You can use our duplicate folder structure feature to reduce the amount of manual work that you have to do. So if I right-click on this 2025 monthly order folder and choose duplicate here, then I can choose to duplicate that folder plus all of its subfolders if I want to. And I can rename it. So we'll name it 2026 monthly order, and then I will click duplicate. And now instead of having to one by one create 16 new folders for 2026, instead Neat has just duplicated that folder structure for me. And I can see this duplicated folder structure here. I can go in and I can make changes to any of the other folders here if I need to. And all of the folders are empty. So I can start fresh and start adding files to these folders secure in knowing that none of my 2025 data is going to get mixed in with the new year. So that's how you can go ahead and you can kind of like set up your folder structure, duplicate that folder structure for the new year. Some other things that I recommend when it comes to setting up your folder structure for the new year is to try to, when it comes to Neat and if you're trying to create expense reports in Neat for like tax reporting purposes, I highly recommend storing all your receipts for a specific period in one folder. So I always store all my receipts, like I separate my business and personal receipts. That's important as well. But I always store like all my 2025 business receipts in one folder. I don't separate them amongst projects or customers or anything, because I can go in and I can track customers and projects and products using these other category fields that we have here. And because I've stored all my expenses for the year in one folder, it's going to make it super easy for me to segment this group of receipts, run reports on this specific group of receipts, filter for this group of receipts, etc. So it's another recommendation that I have for setting up your folder structure for the new year to be successful. So that kind of brings us to the end of today's webinar. I'm actually going to share a handout with you guys right now. This handout is just the slide deck. So basically the slides that we went through today, all of these ones here. So if you want to, you want to keep this slide deck, you certainly can. And it includes all of the tips and tricks that we talked about today for closing out your financial year. Closing out the financial year does not have to be complicated, especially when you have a tool like Neat, which does a lot of the heavy lifting. And I think that the most important takeaway from today is that many of the best practices that we talked about today are things that can be worked on throughout the year. So, by working on them throughout the year, you're making your year-end prep or your year-end wrap-up that much easier. You're really making it a breeze. So I hope that this webinar helps guide you through how you can review expenses and get started on tax prep now, while also hopefully helping everybody maybe establish some healthy financial and organizational habits that you can, employ through the new year. That is it for today. That is the end of our webinar. I'm going to check to see what types of questions have come in and see if I can answer any specific questions. It looks like George, Melissa, and Tia have been pretty busy answering questions that have been coming through. So I'm going to take a look and see. So like Tony asked a question, how do I get to the Do My Book section in Neat? I don't see that section in mine. So Tony, just to clarify, to access that section of Neat, the accounts and transactions section, or the Do My Books section, I'm just going to share my screen so you guys can see which section that Tony is referring to, this section up here, you need to have one of our Neat Plus Automated Insights plans. The Neat Plus Automated Insight plan basically gives you access to all features available in Neat. So you get all the files features plus the Do My Books features. The Do My Books features allow you to actually connect financial accounts to Neat. So you can actually, for example, connect like a Wells Fargo account to Neat and have all those transactions stream into Neat. And then you can, reconcile them. You can run reports on them. You can see all the financial information in one spot, which is very helpful and informative. You can also, with that feature, you also can access our invoicing features as well. So if you need to create mock-up invoices for users, you can use that invoicing feature as well. Let's see, any new questions? Interesting. Tim says, when I create files and move receipts, documents, etc., can I remove from all files to give more room on my computer? So Tim, I don't know if maybe this is like a fundamental understanding of how Neat works, but the Neat web application, which I am demonstrating for you right now, along with our Neat desktop application, provides you with cloud storage only. So none of the files that you see in my database right now, and none of the files that you would upload to the Neat Cloud or the Neat Desktop application would be stored locally. They're not stored locally. They're all stored in the Neat Cloud. And so therefore, they're not going to take up any extra space on your computer at all. All you need is basically a browser to be able to access those files. So there's no issue with using Neat. There's no issue with Neat taking up a bunch of space on your computer. All the files are stored on the cloud, and they're not taking up any space on your computer. So I hope that helps answer your question. If you're referring to my all files filter here, this is just a filter. This is a filter of all of the files that I have in my Neat database. So I can see all my files in one space. It basically shows me all my files regardless of which folder I have saved these files in within my Neat database. So I hope that maybe clarifies a few things for you. If not, please let us know. Okay, cool. Thanks, Tim. Let's see. Claudia says, can you show where split receipts was again? Absolutely, Claudia. So we're going to finish answering this. So to split a receipt, you're simply going to right click on the receipt that you want to split, or you can put a check mark next to the receipt that you want to split and click the ellipses menu down here and click split from here. I always think that right clicking is much more convenient than using the ellipses menu. But you can just right click and then choose split. And then that will enter you into this splitting window where you can then split your receipt as, I think, honestly, as many times as you want. As far as I know, there's no limit as to how many times you can split a receipt. Basically, it's just, I guess the limit would be 1 cent per split, because the total amount of all of your splits does need to equal the total amount of the actual original item. So you could split it, 1 cent per each split until they add up to that total amount. So you could do quite a lot of splits that way. I hope that helps you find it, Claudia. So Tim asks a great question as well. How secure is the Neat database where our info is stored? Tim, this is a great question. Let me just pop open our securities page. But we take your data security incredibly seriously, and we, employ a number of measures to ensure that your data is safe. So here is, if you come to neat.com and you check out our security page, you can kind of get a breakdown and an in-depth breakdown of all of the different ways that we keep your data secure, including, making promises that we will never sell your customer information to third parties. We monitor our infrastructure 24/7, 365. We host our data centers in leading, compliant data centers. We use bank level security encryption. We are constantly performing external audits and assessments. And we also now offer multi-factor authentication. So we have a second layer of security when you're logging into your account, since you can enable multi-factor authentication on your account, requiring that you enter not just a passkey, but also a passcode during the login process. So if you go to your user profile in Neat, you can actually enable multi-factor authentication, and then you have to log in using 2 methods for logging in, which makes it that much more secure. So like I said, for full details, like the nitty-gritty details about all of the things that we do in terms of our data centers, our penetration testing, our privacy message, all of that stuff can be found here at neat.com/security. And then if your job or your business has specific requirements for security, you can always reach out to the Neat support team, and we'll be able to answer specifics on security and whether or not Neat meets those security standards that you might have. But we have a variety of different businesses and personal users using Neat, from healthcare to financial management and financial advice. So lots of different people are using Neat and are using it because it's secure. So I hope that helps, Terry. Kung asks, how close are you to having 2-factor authentication not using email? Kung, we are working on adding other ways to get that multi-factor authentication code. For clarification, right now, when you enable multi-factor authentication, you're only able to get that security code via email to the email address that's on file. However, in the future, we're going to implement phone so you can get a text message with the code, or also authenticator app to get the code. However, that is still in development. And I do apologize, Kung. I took a look at our product roadmap before this webinar, and unfortunately, I don't have any updates on that at the moment. I know that there are, we rolled out a number of big features this year, including multi-factor authentication, including the ability to split receipts within the file cabinet, including a new paid custom attribute. So a lot of these big feature requests that many users have asked about or many users have requested. So it's only a matter of time. We keep getting more requests for that until we have that in the application. So I think with that, guys, I'm not really seeing any other specific neat questions that I can see. I am seeing a couple people needing to wrap up for the day. So I think that's where we'll wrap up. Thank you all for joining me today. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the day, and we'll be seeing you very soon in our next webinar. Thank you all, and goodbye.